The Zephyrian War Council had calculated everything. Their quantum processors had analyzed human military doctrine across 17 different conflicts, mapped psychological breaking points with mathematical precision, and modeled the exact pressure required to shatter humanity's will to fight. The species that had conquered 12 star systems in 3 centuries had never encountered a force they couldn't break through superior strategy and overwhelming technological advantage. They were about to learn why humans had survived the evolutionary gauntlet of Earth. Admiral Vexithara studied the holographic display showing the Third Fleet's positions around the human colony of New Geneva. Her forearms moved in calculated gestures, adjusting attack vectors and deployment patterns. The humans had fortified the planet's 3 moons and established a defensive grid that, while impressive for such a young species, would crumble within standard rotations once the assault began. "Begin Phase 1, she commanded, her translator rendering the clicking sounds of her native tongue into standard galactic. "Target their orbital installations, Standard Doctrine 77 Alpha. Break their defenses, then their spirit." The Shawam, Zephyrian fleet opened fire with precision that had broken worlds. Particle beams carved through space, antimatter torpedoes bloomed like deadly flowers, and quantum disruptors tore at the fabric of reality itself. The human defensive grid flared and sparked under the onslaught, exactly as the calculations predicted. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of falling back to regroup, instead of attempting desperate counterattacks, the human ships did something the Zephyrian computers had never modeled. They charged directly into the killing field. "Impossible," whispered Tactical Officer Krendoy. "They're flying straight into concentrated fire. This violates every principle of self-preservation." Admiral Vexithara's compound eyes focused on the display. 3 human destroyers had broken formation and were diving toward the Zephyrian dreadnought world render, their hulls ablaze, weapons firing even as their ships disintegrated around them. It was madness. It was suicide. It was working. The world render had to break formation to avoid the kamikaze run, disrupting the carefully orchestrated attack pattern. Other human ships immediately exploited the gap, not with the calculated precision the Zephyrians expected, but with something far more dangerous: improvisation born of desperation and absolute refusal to yield. "Sir," came a transmission from the human flagship, the Indomitable. Admiral Vexithara had intercepted their communications before. Humans seemed incapable of maintaining proper communication discipline. Now she listened again, expecting to hear the surrender frequencies. Instead, she heard laughter. "Rodriguez, you magnificent bastard," came the voice of Admiral Chen, the human commander. "Did you see that Corvette take out their cruiser? Remind me to buy that crew a drink when we get home." When we get home. Not if. These humans spoke as if victory was inevitable, even as their ships burned around them. The battle continued for 18 hours. By all calculations, it should have lasted 4. The humans had no new technology, no secret weapons, no tactical advantage. What they had was something the Zephyrian databases had cataloged but never truly understood: an absolute refusal to accept defeat. When the Indomitable lost its main engines, instead of retreating, it used its momentum to ram a Zephyrian battlecruiser. When the human Marines ran out of ammunition, they fixed bayonets and charged plasma rifle positions. When their defensive grid finally collapsed, they turned debris into weapons and dead ships into shields. But it was what happened next that truly shattered Zephyrian doctrine. The humans started talking to each other. Not military communications, personal messages. A pilot named Sarah broadcasting her daughter's first words to her squadron. An engineer sharing his grandmother's recipe for apple pie while welding a hull breach. Soldiers singing songs from their homeworld as they held impossible positions. These weren't soldiers fighting for territory or resources. They were families defending each other, and they treated every Zephyrian warrior not as an enemy to be defeated, but as an intruder in their home to be expelled. The Zephyrians had broken other species by destroying their command structure, by creating chaos and fear. But chaos seemed to make humans stronger. When their admiral was killed, 5 Different captains stepped up to coordinate the defense. When their communications array was destroyed, they used light signals and electromagnetic bursts. When even that failed, they somehow continued fighting with an intuition that defied explanation. By the 20th hour, Admiral Vexthera stared at displays that made no sense. Her fleet had superior numbers, superior technology, and superior position. Yet human ships kept appearing where they shouldn't be, executing maneuvers that violated tactical doctrine but somehow worked. Admiral, Krendoy's voice held something the Zephyrian language had no word for, something humans called awe. The humans have stopped fighting defensively, they're attacking us. It was true. Somehow, impossibly, the battered human fleet had gone on the offensive. Ships that should have been hulks were still firing. Marines who should have been dead were still advancing. And through it all, that impossible human laughter echoed across the communication channels. When the surviving human fleet finally limped away from New Geneva after 47 hours of continuous combat, they left behind something that would change the galaxy forever. Proof that humans couldn't be broken by conventional means. The Zephyrians had calculated everything except the one variable that mattered most. They had tried to break humanity's will to fight, not understanding that for humans, the will to fight wasn't separate from the will to live, to love, to protect. What mattered? They had thought humans would break under pressure. Instead, they learned that pressure was how humans made diamonds. Admiral Vexithara filed her report with shaking hands. Recommended action: immediate diplomatic contact. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to an enemy is make them your friend. And humans, she had learned, were very good at making friends out of enemies. The universe would never be the same.